It's so interesting because you could definitely get from her testimony, Lisa, that she was angry for a number of reasons, and many of them she didn't bring up. She obviously doesn't like being lied about. She obviously doesn't like having her personal life dragged out into the open and also lied about. She mentioned several times in her testimony that she's had to move a lot because of death threats, even before the election trial began, because of other trials that she's presided over. I mean, this has been a tough job for her. And then to hear, this sideshow happen to try and delay the election interference case, this is her point of view. She was just, absolutely PO'd and got up on the stand because she was like, damn it, I'm just going to have to tell my own story to these people. Let's talk about these people. The Trump attorneys seemed bumbling. They seemed unprepared. They seemed completely surprised that she took the stand and had absolutely nothing prepared for her. They kept asking her the same questions over and over again, and they would talk about her cash, the cash that she kept in her home. Through the course of her life, she said she had anywhere between $500 cash during hard times, up to $15,000 maybe in her apartment during really good times, maybe on average $6,000 to $9,000. But she never walked around with it except on vacation. At the most, she spent $2,500 cash when they went on a trip. That was to pay him back for it. But most of the time, she didn't carry around this cash, but she kept it where she lived. And let's talk about where she lived. She couldn't live in her home. She couldn't live in her home because this election interference trial has caused a danger to her life. So if you're wondering why she's angry, is that this has led to such an upheaval in her life in so many different ways to serve and to try and take this case to fruition, and then to have this happen, that would cause someone to be very, very angry. I know I'm going to get to a question, but I just want to point out, it's bad when you turn on Fox News and they start talking about her demeanor, her behavior, her looks. I mean, it shows that there's probably a problem with the case that they think they have against her. I thought she was fiery. I thought she said important things. I think that she set herself up for a lot of criticism, but I think this is a woman who doesn't give a damn about that. How do you think she did, Lisa, in the face of everything that came at her yesterday? Would you have adjusted anything?
It's really hard to say, Mika. It's really hard to criticize somebody's performance given the accusations that have been thrown at her and Nathan Wade. If Fani Willis were my client, I probably would have advised against two things. I would have advised against some of the shows of anger, and I would have advised her against some of the detail that she provided. There were times in which that detail was helpful and humanizing to her, and there were other times where it was just unnecessary explanation and almost gave the other attorneys more license to probe into her personal life. But I'm glad that you put the focus on her safety and what she was going through at the time. And let me add an additional lens of COVID, because at the time that she moved into the safe house that became the subject of some of the questions yesterday, she reminded everybody who was watching that was peak COVID. That was a period of time where she was, as she put it, really lonely. And because she was living alone in the safe house, her father continued to live in her primary residence, and she just seemed in that moment very human. But it's easy for me as a lawyer and litigator who watched this to criticize in retrospect. It's another thing to have lived this. And I think to bring a different lens to it, one of the reasons that the attorneys on the Trump side seem so flummoxed by her is that they lack a certain cultural competency. Depending on how you grew up, where you grew up, and even things like who your community was, the practices that Fani Willis was talking about in terms of keeping cash in your home, those might resonate differently with you depending on your upbringing. And so a number of attorneys in that courtroom were completely stymied by it. That didn't seem to make sense to her. But when she explained how she was raised by her father and how important it was for him to see her grow up, independent and financially independent at that as a Black woman, that made the difference for me and I think for others watching as well.
Gene, we really do have to take a step back here as we spent hours watching questions and discussion about whether D.A. Willis split the check for dinner on the trip to Belize or if Mr. Wade paid for dinner on the cruise to the Bahamas. Let's take a step back. This is a case in which Donald Trump is on tape asking the Secretary of State of Georgia to steal the election. So let's remember what we're really talking about here. And I understand this is a tactic that the Trump team is trying to get this case moved out, at least from D.A. Willis's office, and maybe gotten rid of altogether. This is a case that scares Donald Trump, and that's why they're resorting to these tactics. He's on tape doing it.
He's on tape doing it, and these are state charges, which, if he were reelected president, he couldn't attempt to pardon himself from. He would be if he were convicted. So this is serious for Trump, and as you said, there's evidence on tape that's about as good as it gets. This was, I think those Trump lawyers had no idea what was coming at them yesterday.
So
I just don't think they anticipated that at all. I think they probably thought that she would, it sounded as if the judge might rule that she did not have to testify. And so I think that's what they were anticipating. And she shows up and she sits down without being instructed to do so. And she's like, come on. I'm here and we are going to do this. And so it seemed to be a pretty disastrous day for the Trump lawyers. I did not, a non-lawyer, I did not hear any of the sort of conflict of interest that you would need, the financial conflict of interest you would need under Georgia law to actually have her bounced as a prosecutor. We will see what the judge does. But a question for Joyce Vance. So how much more of this does the judge intend to put up with or have to put up with? I heard at the very end he was asking each side, how many more witnesses do you want to call? Is this going to go on and on and on, or can he or should he just cut this off at some point? Because one thinks that everybody has heard enough at this point.
Right. We've heard far more about Fani Willis's personal life than she should ever have been forced to divulge. And I think it's a great question for this reason. This is a judge who, although he's young, is savvy. He's a former federal prosecutor. And he's building a record. He's giving the defense here, he's giving Michael Roman's lawyers every opportunity to put evidence into the record to show that there's a conflict of interest. And if they continue to fail to do that, if this judge rules, as I think we're expecting him to do, that although Fani Willis may have shown some poor judgment in her personal life, dating someone she worked with, that nothing rises to the level of disqualification, then there will be an evidentiary record that will support the judge's decision if there's a conviction and the case goes on appeal. And that's what trial judges think about. Am I creating a record that will get me affirmed on appeal? So as much as this is a painful spectacle in many ways, and certainly no one would hope, or at least no one who thinks about the criminal justice system in the way that I do, would ever want to see a prosecutor essentially persecuted like Willis has been, this may well benefit the case in the long run.